welcome to a brand new division. We're spitting out various debate leagues throughout the league now. I'm taking charge of TV debates, and this is going to be a lot of fun. And I'm going to introduce my co-commissioners, co-runners. I don't know what to call them yet, but they're here. But we've got Ryan Permison. Ryan, how's it going?
It's going well, Malcolm. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to see what this new division is going to bring to the interwebs and entertain the millions and millions watching at home. And I'm looking forward to seeing what these two competitors can do in this brand new league, in this new division. So let's get it rolling.
And also here, you may have seen him in a few matches on TV Throwdown, but he's here. He's been around for a few times. Alec Miller. Alec, how's it going?
It's going great, man. Can't wait to get this division started. These guys are going to start us out hot. I already know it, so let's get to it.
But yeah, as you can see, we started every division up with a tournament, and this is the first match that we're doing for this, and it's going to be a good one. I know it because I've got my buddy Matthew Kearns versus Jacoby. Let's see how they're feeling. Jacoby, how are you feeling about this match today?
I was excited until I heard you call Matthew your buddy. So now I'm super nervous here. I don't get anything for that. That's fine. But no, I'm great. I'm excited for this. When I initially signed up for this, I thought it was a TV trivia match, and then I found out afterwards that was not the case. So now I'm here and ready to do this. Will I get a point? That's for for us to find out here. I'm curious myself. But overall, it's fun. Like talk about TV. So this will be good.
And Matt, how are you feeling about this matchup?
I'm feeling good. New league, new debate league. I've never debated in a format like this. The only time I've ever debated has been on Late Night on Take 3, which you can find on Take 3 Productions YouTube channel. We usually go live every Thursday or Friday. And I don't want to get too cocky here, but, as a former debate champion myself, the 1 week Cody Newberry wasn't on, I'm excited to debate again. I haven't done it in a while. Jacoby, you have nothing to fear. It was literally, there was like no one on that night. So I'm excited. I haven't debated in a while. TV is not really my forte. Movies is. So Malcolm was like, you should put your name on that post. And I was like, okay. And then Sue Braff posted. I was like, oh, I guess I'm in the tournament. Fun. So.
We're both so confident.
I don't know how. What do I do with my hands?
But yeah, basically how the format works is going to be four main round questions, and if we're tied at the end of those four, then we're going to do a speed round. And basically, the person who wins is the first person to 3 points. So. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we'll kick it off with the first question, which is, what is the greatest sitcom of all time? And I'm going to go to... I should really talk about the timings. But you get 90 seconds on the clock for your opening, then 5 minutes for the main round free-form debate, and then 1 minute for the closings. I'll talk about the speed rounds when we get to it. But Jacoby, kick us off with your opening first.
Okay, I'm going to time myself so I know.
I've got the timer here anyway.
Okay,
time
cool.
begins when you begin talking.
Okay, cool. Not too many shows start great and end great, but that's actually, I think, pretty okay, because what I think is 10 times more impressive is when a television show starts off a little bit rough around the edges and then eventually finds its voice and finds a way to work with its characters to make something really special and deserving of the title of greatest of all time. For my pick for the greatest sitcom of all time, it's Parks and Recreation, because as I said, it's a show that started with one of the a really rough first season, but for that to grow into something with so much humor, so much heart, so many great characters, a great world around it, and most importantly, did not overstay its welcome after it hit its high point. That's just an amazing achievement for any sitcom. So that's why Parks and Recreation is the greatest sitcom of all time.
Finishing early, see how that strategy pays off for him. And now we go on to Matt. Matt, hit us with your opening. Time begins. Yeah.
You look at the landscape of TV sitcoms today, you look at stuff like Parks and Rec, Superstore, Modern Family, Go-Bergs. The one show that you could trace all that back to would be NBC's The Office. When you look at the greatest sitcom of all time, not only is it a great show that started off great, and I think even if it did have points that didn't work, it always came back swinging stronger, but it also influenced so much. You look at characters like Michael Scott, Dwight, Jim, Pam, those great characters where a lot of storylines formed around, but it also created the idea of a sitcom being about an ensemble, about ancillary characters that are just as interesting as your main characters. You see that in Parks and Rec, you see that in Modern Family, you see that in just TV shows that aren't sitcoms. I think what NBC's The Office did is so important to the landscape of not just sitcoms, but to television in general, for its writing, its characters, its humor, and what it did for the genre of sitcoms makes it, in my opinion, the best sitcom of all time.
Also finishing early. Now we get into the and then once someone begins talking, then it's a free-form debate. So try not to talk over it. Try not to talk over each other all the time. Time begins when someone starts talking.
I'm really glad that you chose The Office, because if this was the question of what is had the greatest maybe like season of sitcom of all time, that's what The Office did. The Office had an incredible run of seasons like 3, 4, 5, and even 6 are just high points in sitcom. But you can't just take a chunk of that and have that be its whole thing. The lampshade that you hang over The Office is that the show did not know what to do once the face of it left. Michael Scott, he left in episode 22 of season 7, and then it continued on for 2 seasons afterwards in sort of an aimless fashion, and it was just not as good without him. Sure, those beginning seasons were great, but it's because Michael was able to influence the events around it. But since he left, the writers didn't know what to do with the characters as much. Shown with the Robert California character, the assassination of Andy's character, and just the whole Jim and Pam boring storylines. After that season, after season 7, it's just it not as good as the early seasons.
I see your point, but I completely disagree. And I think you have to look at, there were some weak season Parks and Rec, and particularly that first season, like you said, even the second season are very weak. And mostly they're weak because they were just copying The Office. Now, of course, the same creator of the US Office also created Parks and Rec, so the similarities there. You look at stuff like Leslie Knope was kind of just the female Michael Scott. And 2 of those later seasons, what season 8 was, maybe it's not the best season, but it did show something that even when Michael Scott left, there were still interesting stories being told. Sure, Andy is the boss didn't work, but stuff like Dwight's story about trying to become manager. Robert California was actually an interesting character. The problem with your show is that it rested on Leslie Knope. If Leslie Knope left, that show would have fallen apart. The Office came back with season 9, and that was great. It did different things. It talked about a marriage with Jim and Pam's that we all thought was this romance, and it showed us the hardships that real people actually go through, but the love that is there, and it was still super funny. And when Ed Helms, Andy was never assassinated. He left the show on a boat, and the show actually even got better when they took out the weaker element. And then when he came back, he was better. He was kind of back to the same Andy that we kind of loved. I think the thing with Parks and Rec is that it owes a lot to The Office. And The Office, what makes it so good is that those great seasons, the high points in The Office are higher than any of the high points in Parks and Rec.
See, there's a lot to unpack there, but I think one of the first things you said was it started off rough. The Office started off rough too. Michael Scott was not an established character in those first 6 episodes of The Office. Same like Leslie Knope was not an established character in the first episode of Parks and Recreation. Michael Scott was a dick. He was copying Ricky Gervais one, and then he eventually found his voice. Your comment about how Parks and Recreation is just copying The Office, sure, it was at the beginning, and that's why it did not work. It had to grow into its own thing, which is what it did. Leslie Knope became not a carbon copy of Michael Scott, kind of the annoying, not aware of people's surroundings, like boss that Michael was. She turned into a go-getter, someone who saw the best in the team around her and would stop at nothing to make her town a better place, to make her office a better place, to make the people around her, and do everything for them no matter what. So the change of her character was simply amazing. And then the end point of Parks and Recreation is way better than any of the endpoints of anything The Office did. I mean, you look at even the most annoying character on Parks and Rec, which is Tom Haverford, who was a guy who just completely started businesses and he failed. His ending, where he started his business and that failed, but then he turned his failure into a book where he wrote about his experiences with failure, is just the perfect ending for that character. You take Ben, who had the debacle of the ice rink town, and then he grew into one of the best political advisors in the country. That's great. And then Leslie Knope herself, growing into, even though it wasn't confirmed, what is more likely, the president of the United States, is such a fitting character trait for her to turn into the leader of the free country with her, goodwill and her idea to change everything. And the idea that the side characters in Parks and Recreation aren't as good as The Office is just ridiculous. I mean, Ron Swanson is an icon all over the net, more so than Stanley, more so than anybody else. Chris Pratt as Andy started as the side character and grew into the main character. But the world around Pawnee was even greater than that. I mean, you had all the town halls. You had John Ralphio. You had his sister. You had the dentist. You had Jam. You had Paul Rudd as Sweetums around that. You had these characters come in for these short bits and just be amazing about that. So because Parks and Rec had this just immense world around it, that's why I just think it's just better than The Office. And then your final point about how Andy came back better. He did not. He came back a dick, sabotaging Erin's relationship with Plop after he left her on the boat because he had to go off on the boat and did not leave her. That's a different Andy than the one who.
There's definitely a very interesting debate. But
see, Malcolm, this is the problem. I'm not used to this kind of freeform shit. I was too nice. I just let Jacoby talk, and I was just listening to him.
Yeah, I did too. Sorry. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
It's fine.
Hey, it's a learning experience.
I mean, for everyone when they first step into do the freeform debate, it does take them a while to sort of get their groove. So, but it doesn't end here. You've still got your closing. So, Jacoby, you went first in the opening. Matt, you can go first in the closing. Wrap it up to a nice bow. And time begins when you start talking.
The title of the show is The Office. The world it was trying to create was the world of the characters. As Pam says in the final line of the show, you can make a home anywhere. That's what the show built. Sure, some of the characters like Michael didn't start out amazing, but by the end, they were a unit. They were family. Every character from Toby to Michael Scott to Jim Halpert grew. They changed, and that was amazing over that 9-year run to see the characters change and grow and see that world get more interesting, more funny, more emotional. With Parks and Rec, once the characters were established, sure, things happened to them, but they didn't really change. Leslie Knope, by season 3, she never really changed by the end of the series run. Michael Scott, when he was established by season 2, he changed by the time he left in season 7. That is what makes The Office great, is that you grew with those characters in every episode, in every storyline. Every joke made the characters better, made that war better. It made you want to visit that office every Thursday night on NBC.
Time. And Jacoby, wrap it up into a nice bow.
How much time do I have?
1 minute.
1 minute? Okay. Yes, Parks and Rec started as an offset of The Office, as a carbon copy of The Office, and it ultimately failed because of that. But when it broke out of its shell and found a way to alter its characters and to find its own voice, it became something basically magical. The humor, the cleverness, and the heart that the show brought on a week-by-week basis after the show's kind of rough first season and its course correction in season 2 is second to none to any type of progression from 0 to 100 of a television show, especially of a sitcom of all time. These characters are so loving. They're so warm. They're people that you want to be around and on a week-to-week basis, like no matter what happens. And you watch them grow. They do grow into a bunch of different, interesting ways. Ron Swanson becomes Federal Reserve. Leslie becomes President of the United States. And more so than that. But overall, Parks and Recreation was about family, and that emphasized that way more than Office ever did.
Well, this was definitely a great fight, and it's going to be interesting. I'm going to go first on this. I'm going to give my point slightly towards Jacoby, because I think he managed to get a lot more in about sort of why Parks and Rec was is the best. I think Matt kind of just got thrown off by the freeform and just is too nice, but. I mean, there's still got more questions to go, so he can still pick up his groove. And I'm not the only judge. So, Alec, who do you give your point to and why?
I'm gonna agree with you on this one. I'm gonna lean towards Jacoby. I think he did a lot better at explaining the different characters that make the show so great. So I'm gonna go with Jacoby.
And with that, Jacoby does get the first point. Next question is, what is the best superhero TV show? And because Jacoby opened first last time, Matt, you can open up first on this one. You've got 1 minute 30 seconds on the clock. Time begins when you start talking.
Smallville, Arrow, Lois and Clark: New Adventures of Superman, any superhero show you can name. What's the one commonality they all have? They all overstay their welcome eventually. You know what superhero show doesn't? The Flash from 1990. The Flash from 1990 has 1 season, 22 episodes, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. It tells 22 amazing stories, develops amazing characters. It is like a run of the comics, and you do not have a weak link. You do not have that season that wasn't very good, or that one character that didn't really grow in season 3. It started strong, it stayed strong, it ended strong. And when you look back at the show, you cannot find a weak link like you can in other superhero shows. It also inspired so much. In 1990, superhero shows were not like they are today. When you look at Arrow, Flash, Supergirl, it all links back to 1990s The Flash.
Right. And Jacoby, 1 minute 30 seconds is on the clock. Time begins when you start talking.
All the questions tonight are really debatable except for this one, because there's really only one answer to what is the greatest superhero show of all time, and that is clearly Batman the Animated Series. That's fact, hands down. There's a ton of reasons why I think this, but just in this opening salvo, I'll breeze over the big ones, because really it was a landmark for storytelling in an animated medium, bringing this noir-infused, hard-boiled detective angle to children's television that was both revered by children and adults in the 90s, also as well as today, both in the 90s and today, which is incredible when you think about that. It was the pinnacle of DC's kind of early animated universe, and it's just crazy to think about all we would not have if Batman the Animated Series wasn't a success, like Superman the Animated Series, Justice League Unlimited. All those came because Batman the Animated Series was a success. And most importantly, it defined the character of Batman for this younger and older generation, to the point where not only general audiences kind of associate Batman with the version from Batman the Animated Series, but also comic writers incorporate elements that were introduced and created for their show into the comics run today, still to this day, which is crazy and incredible when you think about that. So really, this show's influence on the character of Batman is just immeasurable, and that is why it is the greatest superhero show of all time.
It's the clash of the 90s superhero shows, so it's definitely going to be really interesting. So make sure the clock isn't going, because I accidentally started to 5 minutes. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting debate. I can't wait to see what happens here. But you've got 5 minutes on the clock. Time begins when someone starts talking.
I won't talk as much as this time, because your show didn't overstay its welcome because it was canceled. Like, that's the reason for it. It was not loved back in the 90s, and if you watch it now, it's not as loved today.
You want to talk about season 4? You want to talk about that great season? Let's talk about Joker's redesign. Let's talk about the story about a bull running through Gotham. wasn't that such a great season? Wasn't that wonderful?
Well, thank
And
you for bringing up the Joker,
you
because
talk
the Joker gave us Mark Hamill's Joker, which is perhaps the most defining
Correct.
Joker of all time. Without, can you think of a world without Mark Hamill's Joker in it? That's a world that I don't want to live in.
Because we had Mark Hamill's Trickster, which is the reason why he even got the job as the Joker. He does.
It was his jumping off point, and that's okay if it's his jumping off point to something much better.
He did in the Flash. All those things you mentioned that Batman the Animated Series did, all this noir and stuff, that's the Max Fleischer Superman cartoon. Paul Dini, everyone who worked on that show will tell you they were just taking inspiration from Max Fleischer Superman cartoons.
And they brought it to a children and adult audiences everywhere, brought it more to the mainstream.
Really? Because in the 1940s, only adults were watching Max Fleischer Superman. You're telling
I'm talking about in the 90s and in the 2000s when it brought it into more popularity.
Justice League Unlimited brought it to the Euro 2000s. By that point, Batman the Animated Series wasn't even running on television.
But it was still revered as one of the greatest animated shows of all time back then. And it's influenced it. And without Justice League, you wouldn't have Justice League Unlimited without Batman the Animated Series.
You would not. Also, by the way, defining Batman in the 90s, that was Tim Burton. That was Michael Keaton 89. That defined that character. 89. And then the 90s came after that. That defined that character. Not Batman the Animated Series. Batman the Animated Series took so many things from the Tim Burton movies, including its opening theme, and kind of just did it on a week-by-week basis. What The Flash did was it took a character that most people didn't even know about and made it into a great character. The reason why we have the
by the end, nobody knew about it still because it was canceled.
No, it was canceled because of bad timing on CBS. It had nothing to do with quality of show, because when people talk about it today, it is amazing. There's a reason why John Wesley Shipp is still on The Flash today. There's a reason why Amanda Pays, who played Tina McGee, was brought back for that show. It is the reason why in Elseworlds we had The Flash 1990 brought back, because people love this show, because they look and they see actually what it did inspire, what it did for superhero shows at a time when in live action, superhero shows were cheap, they were boring. It was the 66 Batman series that people thought about. This show made it dramatic. It made it interesting. It brought up interesting discussions about, like, in 30 years, will anyone remember you being a hero? So is it even worth being a hero? It brought up an interesting relationship. It was the first time we really had an adult relationship in a superhero show. They weren't all lovey-dovey. Tina and Barry were an actual friend that were becoming a couple. That was interesting to watch. You didn't see that in superhero shows. And in a lot of ways, you still don't see it. When you watch Arrow, when you watch Smallville, you can see the Flash's influence all over it. You can see that interesting story about week by week, not it being a monster of the week story, but it being about a character growing in the episode, a hero growing. Batman the Animated Series, you don't need to watch every episode. You can pick up an episode in season 1 and then season 4. And it's just Batman. Barry Allen grows in the show. That's what makes it a great show, is that he grows, he improves, and it also does not have a weak link. I can point to you several weak links in season 4 of Batman the Animated Series that take away from it. I can point to you several things like the Arkham series that were inspired by the show that are better than Batman the Animated Series. Heck, even Superman the Animated Series, when it comes to being a superhero show, is superior to Batman the Animated Series. The Flash, on the other hand, 22 episodes, 21 episodes and a TV movie, and it is perfect. It is great. There is no episode that falters. There's nothing. It also, like I said, Trickster, Mark Hamill, one of the all-time great villains. It's the reason why he got the job as the Joker in the first place, and in a lot of ways, he kind of did it better as Trickster.
I think that, yeah, I really wanted to let you talk because I didn't want to interrupt you like I did last time. When you're looking at the early superhero shows, the more defining ones are clearly Incredible Hulk, because you skipped one from Incredible Hulk to Wonder Woman in the 70s. Those were really the defining ones, and those ones lasted multiple seasons. It's not like there was no audience for these types of shows. It's just that they didn't connect with the Flash. It was too campy, too niche, too special. People like us, sure, we love it. Do general audiences love the Flash nowadays? No. The only thing that people like nowadays about the Flash is that it's incorporated now in today's Flash. If it wasn't incorporated in today's Flash, it would not be relevant. Nobody would be talking about it if it was not included in the Flash new series. It would not be in there.
What are you talking about? One of the reasons why the Flash even exists in the CW is because of this show. You think they went and the guy?
That is not the reason. The reason why is Arrow, which has darker influences. You know, and the darker influences are more
time. This show. Holy shit.
Dear the Matt, I know. But yeah, that was definitely a hell of a debate, but it's not going to end here. There's still the closings, and because Matt opened this one off, Jacoby, you could go first on the closing. 1 minute begins when you start talking.
When you have to name the greatest superhero of all time, you have to look at what it does for the hero. The Flash 1990 had no really big ramifications for the character themselves, while Batman, the animated series, made changes to the lore of Batman that still persists to this day. Mr. Freeze's backstory was changed to the one we know and love because of Batman, the animated series. Harley Quinn, the face of one of the faces of the DCU now, is only around because she was introduced as a character in Batman, the animated series. Phantasm, which gave us a great live-action movie, is being put into the comics in the comics one right now of Batman right now. So all of that's why it's the greatest of all time. It's a superhero show of all time because of how it influences the characters today, even still 20, 30 years after it's been aired.
And finishing early, we'll see how that pays off.
How much time did I have left?
12 seconds.
Damn it! I thought I was.
But Matt, it's time for you to close it off and wrap it up into a nice bow. Yeah.
It's nice that Batman the Animated Series did so many nice things for Batman, but what makes The Flash 1990 the greatest superhero show is it didn't just do great things for the character Flash, it did great things for superhero shows overall. And as you said, all these things like Harley Quinn, Mr. Freeze, it was all done better than other mediums that came afterwards. The Flash 1990 is a great show that never overstayed its welcome. It had great stories in every episode. It made the character grow, and it brought the character into the landscape, into pop culture. The reason why we know The Flash now is because of this series. It is the reason why John Wesley Shipp is brought back in The Flash show. It's the reason why they reference Team Lee, things like that, is because this show made an influence on superhero shows that came after it.
That was a very debate. I really don't know how to do it, but because Ryan's vote didn't count last time, Ryan, you can give your judging first.
Antoine got a little hot under the collar. Oh, man. Woo! This is why this new division is going to skyrocket on the interwebs and the ratings are going to go through the roof. But anyway, to the business at hand. I'm going to cut right to the chase. Both guys gave incredible points for an incredible argument, for an amazing question. I know I'm running out of words here, but still, there's something that was said in the closing arguments that just kind of slightly, that because of those words in that closing statement, put it slightly over the edge for me. And Your Honor, with all due respect, once again, Matt, you put up such a great fight, man. I'm telling you. But ever so slightly, I'm going to give it to Jacoby on this one. There's something that he said in those closing arguments that just slightly put it over the edge for me. But, man, this really could go either way, and both you competitors should be happy with yourselves because that was a great question, and both of you had great arguments. Back to you in the studio.
Well, I'll go next on this. I'm actually feeling the other way. My vote's going to go slightly to Matt on this one because he brought up the points of that people like Harley Quinn, Mr. Freeze, and all that were done better in other mediums apart from this. And he also his point about Mark Hamill's tricks to sort of giving him the reason to why he became the Joker that everyone knows kind of stuck with me. So for those reasons alone is probably why my point's going to go to Matt. So Alec, you all got the tiebreaker.
Man, y'all are making this job easy, guys. I'm going to have to go with Matt on this one also, man. Matt took what he learned from the first round and brought it in the second round. What got me to sway me towards his side was when he was bringing up the connections between the fact that they were willing to make the connection between the original Flash into this new Flash. So I'm going to go with Matt on this one.
The next question is going to be a really fun one as well. And as you all know, Alex Trebek, there's talks of him possibly retiring sometime in the future. So I thought, let's help the producers of Jeopardy out and throw in who should be the new host of Jeopardy once Alex Trebek retires. And Jacoby, I'll go first to you for the opening. So your time starts when you begin talking.
What is Jeopardy? Jeopardy is a trivia show where 3 contestants answer general knowledge questions. And the reason it's been so successful for so long is because the man at its host, at the post, is the man who Stephen Colbert once called the man with all the answers, Alex Trebek. Alex Trebek is intelligent. He is calm. He's witty when he needs to be, and he's able to guide things along. His personality fits Jeopardy so well. So you need someone whose personality also fits Jeopardy so well. And that is why the best person to replace Alex Trebek is Ken Jennings, because Ken Jennings is also intelligent, as we know. He's funny when he needs to be, but he's not over the top hilarious. And his destiny is going to be forever intertwined with his amazing run on Jeopardy. 76 games, $2.7 million. Is going to go unmatched for almost forever. I doubt anyone's ever going to beat that. So for him to take over the reins of Jeopardy from Alex Trebek just makes so much narrative sense. There's something so right about hearing Ken Jennings is the new host of Jeopardy. You hear that and you're like, yeah, I like that. And it can continue Jeopardy's just historic run and keep it going for another 30 years from now.
Right, and time to go to Matt for your opening. Time begins when you begin talking.
I just want to show you guys some things before I start my argument. What does that say right there? That says Josh McCoo for Jeopardy. Someone who is passionate about the show of Jeopardy and wants to see it not go for 30 years, hundreds of years afterwards. Ken Jennings, yes, he had a great run, but what happens if next week we get someone who's better than him? What are you going to say? Josh McCouga has the answers because he's reading them from a sheet, just like Mark Ellis or Christian Harloff on the Schmodown. But what Josh McCouga has over Ken Jennings and everyone else, he has the passion. He wants to see the show succeed. Josh McCouga will do for Jeopardy what Happy Gilmore did for golf. If you remember in that movie, what did Happy do? All the fans who love golf loved to watch him play. But Josh McCouga also brought in a new crowd. That way, when people like my grandmother pass on, Jeopardy will still continue. It will still be strong. People will keep tuning in to watch McCouga. And he will not be wild and crazy. If you watch him on WGN movies, he is not the crazy wild man himself. He can be reserved while still being really funny. And he has that charisma. He has that on-air talent. Sure, Ken Jennings sat there and answered questions, but does he have any flair on the camera? Would anyone want to watch him that isn't being stuck in a hospital waiting room? I don't think so. Whereas Josh McCouga will make it fun. People will want to see him every week talk about, bring it on. The way he will interact with guests will be fun. And the biggest thing of all is he has the passion for the show and wants to see it succeed.
So, Josh McCouga versus Ken Jennings. Sounds like a WWE match that we happen. But anyway, 5 minutes is on the clock. The freeform will start whenever someone starts talking.
I feel like this one's going to be much more subdued than the last one, less passionate about that. But I will just say this. I love Josh McCouga so much. But at the end of the day, McCouga is not right for Jeopardy, and Jeopardy is not right for McCouga. If I want to see McCouga host something, I want it to be an exciting television show, something that suits best his talents to go out there, because I like to see him flustered when he's kind of confused. I like to see him wild and out there and passionate about something. And those best qualities about Josh McCouga do not fit into the format of Jeopardy. And if you insert a host that's so different than its established format, things don't really work out, so great. Think of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? You know that show's still going with like Chris Harrison as the host, and they changed the format completely because he doesn't have the same cadence and depth as Meredith Vieira. It's a different show now. It's not as good as the show. I love McCouga. I want him to be great.
Change it. Also, McCouga's not going to change it. And by the way, Regis Philbin was the original host of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
I said that.
McCouga's not going to change it because he's passionate about the show like you. He is passionate about this show. He loves it. He wants to see it continue. And McCouga also, like every creator, they want to grow. He does not want to be the wild man when he's 80 because who would? What McCouga wants to do, when he was a kid, who did he want to be? He wanted to be Alex P. Keaton. Is Alex P. Keaton crazy? No, Alex P. Keaton is genius. He's calm, he's subdued, but Makuga will be fun. He will bring something fun. He will bring a new audience, which is exactly what ABC would want. ABC would want someone who's going to bring in new viewers.
And give
more
him
money,
a different show that allows it to be more fun, more exciting. Give him something that allows him to have personality. The Jeopardy host does not have that much personality besides that much. And it doesn't need to have it because that's what Jeopardy is. Jeopardy is just questions back and forth.
Why doesn't it need it? Wouldn't that be fun if Alex Trebek kind of just joked around a little bit more than just sat there and read Cougar? Maybe people who aren't like my 90-year-old grandmother, more of them would be watching Jeopardy.
I watch Jeopardy all the time. The James Holtzhauser one, the most incredible thing all the time.
And
it's
again,
great.
With Ken Jennings, I go back to my point. Does he have camera presence? Can he really sit there and
yes,
make people
he has
want
in
to
all his
listen to
interviews
him?
that he's given. He's a calm, nice, fun, witty presence, and he's intelligent as hell.
Witty?
And you need
When
that
is he
to
witty?
be. And you need to have that in all of his, even in his Twitter battles with James Holtzhauser. He's great. He's sarcastic and he's great on his interviews. And his back and forth with Brad Gilmore and even Watson when he fights that there. His personality shines through. He's going to be
Is he passionate or did he just win on Jeopardy? In 20 years, if there's another Ken Jennings who did better than him, is he going to?
He wrote a book about Jeopardy. He is passionate about that.
Makuga loves this show. He has loved it since he was a kid. He will love it until the day he dies.
Then he should host Celebrity Jeopardy. That is a show I'd see him host Celebrity. That'd be great. Josh Makuga there is so good.
Loves this show. We need someone who loves it. We can't just have a flavor.
And
of
you're
the
saying
month
Ken Jennings, whose history is so intertwined with Jeopardy itself, who comes back for all the tournaments, who tweets about it, who writes book about it, does not love the show. Why does Makuga love the show so much?
Saying Josh Makuga for Jeopardy if they didn't care about the show.
They do that because it's funny. It's funny to think of Josh Makuga as the host of Jeopardy.
Not funny. It is not.
It's not funny. Why is that not funny?
Did you watch Unclear video when they put up his audition reel? Did you listen to the story about Alex Trebek talking to Josh Makuga when he visited Jeopardy? It is not a joke. It is not a skit. It is something he actually wants to do. I don't think Ken Jennings wants to do it. I think he wants to keep playing Jeopardy. I bet he would come back to the tournaments and keep playing. But I don't think he wants to sit there every week having to watch these people who he thinks he could beat. Makuga wants to be there. He wants to make this show better. He wants to bring in a new audience that will love the show just as much as he does. And that's who we want to be the new host. That's who we want. We don't want someone who's going to come in there and is going to not care about the show in 5 years. Because that's not Makuga.
That's ridiculous to say that Ken Jennings will not care about the show in 5 years. I just want to give Makuga a show that he can really absolutely shine, that he can grow into his own thing, into his own legacy. Ken Jennings taking over for Alex Trebek makes sense because of his past with Jeopardy. Makuga coming in cold to Jeopardy itself, just because we know him as a fan of Jeopardy, doesn't make him the best host for that job. He's the best host for another more exciting show.
Before he did Family Feud.
His talk show, his Harvey talk show, his stand-up comedian.
But you think that exactly? Josh Makuga has a talk show. Josh Makuga did stand-up comedy. Steve Harvey worked out pretty well hosting the Feud.
Think of what Family Feud was and what Family is now. Family Feud was a game show back then. Now it's just an influence for sexual innuendos, and I don't want to see Jeopardy turn into that.
No, but Makuga's not going to let that happen because Makuga actually cares about this show. Makuga loves this show, and he wants to see it improve.
I'm sure Steve Harvey loves Family Feud too, but that doesn't mean that his personality is the best for that. Just because Josh Makuga loves the show doesn't mean he's the right fit for the show. Ken Jennings also loves the show, and he's the right fit for the show. I thought that was going to get calmer, but then it just started getting more and more.
I thought it was going to be calmer. So I was like, you know what, Jeopardy host.
Yeah, Ken Jennings,
again, and I was like, oh, fuck it, I'm not giving up on this.
It's like one of those things. It's like either I come in hot and like you come in hot, but then I see you come in hot, so I have to come in hot, and then we just escalate from there.
Yeah, it's just like fire with fire, and we're just going to set it ablaze.
But but we've still got the closings to go. But Jacoby, you went first in the opening, so Matt, you can go. You're going first in the closings again. 1 minute begins when you start talking.
Okay. The baby who I showed you in the beginning of my argument, her name is Cara Smith. In 20 years from now, that's the audience. We want people in 20 years to be watching the show. Cara Smith would watch Josh Makuga. Kids like her today who are growing up in the same way that I grew up wanting to watch Alex Trebek. Kids will want to watch Josh Makuga because he cares about the show in the same way Alex Trebek does. Ken Jennings, honestly, until he went on his run, I didn't know who he is. Most people didn't know who he was. sure, you could say people who watch Jeopardy might not know Makuga, but if they look, all they have to do is search Josh Makuga Jeopardy. They will watch his audition tape on Claire, and they will see he's good at the show. He's passionate about the show, and he wants it to succeed. Ken Jennings, yeah, he might like Jeopardy. He might have gone on a good run, but I'm not sure how crazy passionate he is to want to host. He might love the show, but does he want to host it? Does he have the ability to host it? Josh Makuga has the passion, he has the ability, he has the skill, and he has that thing. He has the touch that will make this show succeed and will make newer generations grow up wanting to watch Jeopardy every day.
And Jacoby, your 1 minute begins when you start talking. Wrap it up into a nice bow.
Yeah, I love Josh Makuga. He has a great personality. He's a great host. He's funny. He's kind of out there. He has a magnetic personality. And I'm saying this because I love Josh Makuga. He should not host Jeopardy. It is not a show where kind of the personality driven host takes over. That's just not the type of show Jeopardy is, and it's not the show that Jeopardy should be. It should not change into something that's more Josh Makuga fronted oriented. No, because it's just a place where 3 people come and they answer trivia questions. Ken Jennings is just the perfect choice for the show because he has history with it. He has a special connection with the show, and he always will, no matter what happens before that. He doesn't have to have a crazy audition tape because he's lived it, he's experienced it, he's around it all the time, and that is why I think that's why Ken Jennings should be the host of Jeopardy. Were you wrapping me up?
No, you had 7 seconds left.
Oh, 7. Okay. So I saw you going. I was like, oh God, I have like 2 seconds.
That's always my biggest fear when I was all the times I've been doing my closings is I'm just gonna be in the middle of a point and I should be like, "Hey, time." And
my main important, most valuable argument is time. Like,
great,
but yeah, there was a lot of fun. This got a lot heated than what even they thought it was going to get. But, Alec, I'm going to start with you. You can give your point first.
All right. That was another hotly contested battle. I am leaning, as much as I hate to say it, I am leaning towards Jacoby's for Ken Jennings, as much as I love Josh Makuga. I think Jacoby gave more reasons of why Ken Jennings would not only be the best host, but also why Josh Makuga might not be the best host for Jeopardy. So I'm giving my point to Jacoby.
Yeah, I'll go next on this. And yeah, I'm going to lean towards Matt slightly on this because, well, he did come up some good points to why like Ken may not necessarily sort of want to host Jeopardy, and like how that he may enjoy like competing in it, and like while Jacoby did do some good points countering Josh Makuga, I don't think he did just enough to do it. So it's going to come down to Ryan for the tiebreaker.
And this is where things get so difficult in this business. No, it's not going to get difficult. I'm all right. I'm going to take all that out of the way. We can't think negative here, folks. We're going to think positive. Anywho, both of you guys, my goodness gracious, I don't know what got into you guys today, but you're bringing the fire, you're bringing the passion, you're bringing the energy, and I love that about this. Both of you guys brought up really good points, but you know what? I didn't think I was going to say this, and this is going to go on record, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to give my point to Matt on this one. I'm going to give my point to Matt because he brought up some good counterpoints to what Jacoby was saying. He really brought the heat. He brought the nuclear fire breath from Godzilla when he was the king of the monsters in that great sequel that no one is talking about, and they should because it's a great film. I don't know why it's getting so much hate, but the bottom line is this. Matt gets the point.
That was the most passionate I think I ever will get about Jeopardy in my life. I don't love the show, but
I did not expect that to be so heated.
So yeah, this next one could potentially get a lot more heated. but this is potentially going to be either game point for Matt, or Jacoby needs to get this to force a speed round. And this question is, if Psych was remade and recast, who would you cast in the roles? And Matt's going to go first on the opening on this. Just get the timer ready. And time begins when you start talking.
The great TV remakes do one thing. They stay faithful to the show while bringing something new to it. That is what my version of the Psych remake will do, and this cast will do. In the role of Sean Spencer, I have Zac Efron. In the role of Bern Guster, I have John Boyega. In the role of Lassie, I have Gerard Butler. In the role of Jules, I have Alison Brie. As Henry Spencer, I have Pierce Brosnan. And as Chief Karen, I have Charlize Theron. Now, my version of the Psych remake, keeping in line with the show of it, is about a fake psychic who works with the Santa Barbara Police Department. In this version, Sean Spencer, he's a little bit more of a laid-back dude. He's a little bit more of a guy who grew up with this great talent and kind of used it to his advantage. During high school, he would kind of mess with a bunch of guys. But when he keeps finding the clues and things that the cops can't find during news reports, and he's brought into work the police department, things change when he meets Juliet O'Hare. And he kind of starts to realize how much of a dick he's been. The other great thing about Psych is all the references. With my cast, you have great references to movies that are funny in the context of the show, but when you know that when they make a joke about Henry being a super spy, it's funny in the context of the show, but then when you realize, oh wait, his dad's James Bond, it's even funnier. I also have changes to characters like Gus, who is not exactly a total scaredy cat. He's kind of just, because that was a problem with the original show, sometimes Gus would just be a little bit too scared. In this version with John Boyega, he will have those tendencies
and
to maybe not be.
And Jacoby, your 90 seconds starts when you begin talking.
Okay, just sorry, I'll start my timer. I think there's one way to reboot and remake Psych in a way that, as Matthew says, stays faithful and brings something new to it, while also keeping the spirit of Psych alive. And that's to set your reboot and remake into the future and make it 30 years from now. And catch up with Sean and Gus while they're older, because I think throwing a bunch of A-list stars into these roles is not what the magic kind of is, and it is not what makes Psych. What makes Psych is its unabashed love of pop culture. So I think an interesting way to take a reboot is to set it when Sean and Gus are in their 60s. Sean is played by geek icon Bruce Campbell. Gus is played by 80s icon Eddie Murphy. Judd Nelson plays Lassiter. Lucy Lawless plays Jules. It's these geeky icons of the 80s and 90s that Psych love to reference on every episode basis is what's going to make this reboot interesting and keep it a fresh reboot, because it's not just a straight remake with a bunch of pretty stars into the cast that the original cast can do better, but it also sets it into the future where we can see where these characters are 30 years from now. Is Sean still the same man 30 years from now? Is Gus still the same man? Is Lassiter still the same man? Henry's probably dead at this point, but that's fine. But all of these, by bringing in these 80 stars, you're going to have a great reboot.
Time. This is going to be a great battle. And we'll see if we go to speedrun after this. But 5 minutes is on the clock. Time begins when someone starts talking.
What you're pitching to me is great. It's a great sequel series that I want to see the original cast in. I don't want to see Bruce Campbell pretend to be James Roday when he's 60. I want to see 60-year-old James Roday playing Sean Spencer. You
would rather see Pretty Boy Ken doll Zac Efron as the geeky, kind of more charismatic Sean Spencer?
Because in the remake, he's not the geeky. He was a pretty boy in high school. That's the whole point. It's a remake, not a sequel. So the characters can change. They can be different.
But how many of those remakes, when they change those characters, actually do well? You're changing a fundamental kind of nature of what Sean. You said you're going to change Gus into more kind of the cool kind of John Boyega one. That doesn't fit at all for Sean and Gus. That misses the magic of what Sean and Gus was.
You think Eddie Murphy is going to play second fiddle to Bruce Campbell?
I think he will now because he's done nothing. He needs a comeback. He was a star in the 80s and he's not now. Those sort of redemptions is something that Psych loved to do. He'd love to bring on those 80s and 90s.
Second fiddle to Bruce Campbell. If he's coming back, he's going to want to be the star of the show.
You're saying he's not going to come back, but like you're saying that Zac Efron and John Boyega and Charlize Theron will be Karen and Pierce Brosnan will be that. They'll all sign in for those roles. I think that Eddie Murphy signing on for a role that is way more plausible than all those A-listers being a Psych reboot.
And I think with this remake, if this remake is coming out this year, we don't want something that is exactly like the original. We want something that's a little different that still keeps with the spirit. We still keep with the spirit.
It's nerdy pop culture things. You even mentioned
there can still be pop culture. There can still be the pop culture references, and it'll be funny because of who the cast members are. It'll be funny when Sean and Gus go to their high school reunion and they make High School Musical jokes because it's Zac Efron. It'll be funny when they make James Bond jokes.
That's just not Psych. I mean, sure, it doesn't have to be the same thing, but at least should remain the same spirit of it. It doesn't have to be, but you're changing it into a comedy. You're changing it into a comedy starring Zac Efron and John Boyega.
When they release like the movie 2 and see the characters a little bit older. If I want to see a sequel, you are pitching a sequel, not a remake.
But at least something that at least can take the same characters that we know and love in interesting directions. I want to see if Sean grew out of his like, you know, man boy tendencies. I want to see if Gus grew to be more or less neurotic.
That is the exact same
Try not to talk over each other.
Sorry. It's all right. Because the remakes that fail, like Gus Van Sant's Psycho, are the ones that try to be too much like the original. See, the remakes that work are the ones that keep faithful to the original while also creating their own thing. You look at something like The Magnificent Seven being a remake of Seven Samurai. It is different, but it's also great. It can stand on its own. And that's
the remake of Magnificent Seven didn't do very well.
Yeah, so what? We're not talking about that. I'm talking about because the original, if you didn't know, was.
But you're asking about how remakes don't always do well. But the remake of the one you said also didn't do well because it changed too much of what it originally was.
I don't want to see. I also Bruce Campbell. Ash vs. Evil Dead, I don't think he's going to be Sean. He's not going to be Sean Spencer.
You don't see him being cocky and lying and overly confident with his Psych thing?
No, I also don't want to see a show about a bunch of 6-year-old cops who are going to break a hip when they try to go out and do police work. What is this going to be, Psych in the old folks' home or something? Are they going to
not in the old folks' home? Both Eddie Murphy and Bruce Campbell and Lucy Lawless still kick a lot of ass, and they still can.
But it's not believable. You realize
being older, about them closing the chapter of their lives when they were growing older.
Yes, but if I want to see the chapter of Psych closed, I want to see the original cast. I don't want to see it with people pretending to be James Roday. With my Psych remake, they're not pretending. They are different characters, and that's what you want in a remake. That's what you want in a remake. You want a remake to be the exact same thing, and with a bunch of characters. When the original cast is still evil, you're not pitching a reboot. You're pitching a sequel. You're pitching a sequel.
In the same characters at a different time in their life. That's how you bring the show back. It's like a reboot of the show because it takes place at a different time.
But he's not going to be doing police work.
Who isn't? Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, I didn't hear your last part.
Okay. You really think Juliette O'Hare is going to still be doing police work when she's 60? That isn't stuck behind that desk.
It can be. She could be captain at that point because she's probably captain. She's made captain in San Francisco. That's the thing. I want to see where these characters have gone in 30 years.
Oh, that's what the movies are for. That's what Psych the movie 2 is going to be, just like the last one. It's picking up the characters a couple of years after the show ended. You're already getting that, except with the cast that we already love.
And that's 10 times better than just throwing a bunch of A-list stars into the roles themselves, like Zac Efron, John Boyega, Gerard Butler as Lassiter.
Gerard Butler as Lassiter would be hilarious.
He doesn't even fit that mold.
Right, we've still got the closings to go.
I'm so thirsty. I'm out of water.
Oh my god, me too. I was like, I've done something wrong.
But yeah, we've got the closings. Matt went first on the opening, so Jacoby, you can go first on the closing. 1 minute is on the clock. It begins when you start talking.
I think the most important thing about a remake or a reboot is when you at least capture the same spirit that the original show was. If you do something completely different, then it's really not a remake or a reboot. It's something, it's its own separate entity that doesn't deserve to be a psych reboot. The reason that I want to see where these characters are 30 years from now is because it's a new type of remake and reboot that we haven't seen before, but totally fits into the wheelhouse of something that psych would do. And that's very important when you think about, would Psych be the type of show that cast A-listers into their roles, or would it be the type of show that cast a bunch of geeky 80s and 90s icons into older versions of themselves? So that's why I think it's important to keep those older people in those roles and to keep the spirit of what made Psych so special in the first place. If you cast those other people, it's just not the same thing.
And that's time. And Matt, wrap it up into a nice bow.
You're totally right. If you cast other people trying to do the exact same thing as the original, it's not going to work. That's why I'm not trying to do Bruce Campbell trying to be James Roday. I'm making a different Sean Spencer. This is going to be what the US office was the UK one, which is keeping the spirit of the original, but also changing characters and making it different, making it a needed reboot. Instead of yours, which we're already getting in the movies. We're all getting sequels. I don't want to see Bruce Campbell trying to be Sean Spencer. I will just see that in the movies. My remake is changing the characters. They're updating them, but they're still going to exist in that world of pop culture references, of humor, of emotion, and it still is going to work into the spirit of Psych while also keeping things different enough that newer audiences can find the show and love it, but older audiences who love the original aren't going to feel alienated, and they're actually going to like the fact that they have two shows that both have the same spirit but are different for both great reasons.
Well, that is the last closings. This is going to be an interesting one to judge. I'm going to go first on this one. And I'm not going to lie, they did get a bit hard to pick out points with when you did get talking over each other, but that's not against you. Hey, it's fine. When you're passionate about something, you do tend to do that. But I'm probably going to lean slightly towards Matt because sort of what he said in his opening and closing, like, and that if you try to do the same thing, we get different characters sort of trying to imitate older versions of ones you love, it may not necessarily work. But if you just take the same characters, put a new spin on them, because one good example that no one brought up anyway is the You Charmed series. It's still got the spirit of Charmed, but yet it's not rehashing the Hallowells. But yeah. So my point's going to go slightly to Matt, but that's why I'm not the only one here. Ryan, who are you going to give your point to and why?
This is, I mean, so many punches were thrown, and then counter punches were thrown, and then another punch was thrown, and this guy punched this guy, and this one was punching. I'm like, just stop it already. I don't know where I'm going on this train ride, for Pete's sake. But anyway, before I lose my sanity, if I haven't done so already with these questions and these passionate arguments by these competitors. Oh boy. Wow. You know, after thinking about it for a little more, I'm slightly going to go with Matt on this one. It's just something about it. It's what they call a je ne sais quoi. What the French call a certain I don't know what. But I'm going to go with Matt on this one. Jacoby, brother, put up some good punches, man. My goodness gracious. I think I saw some uppercuts from Scorpion to Liu Kang in Mortal Kombat 1, the video game, not the movie. But still, my goodness. Great job to both men. Anyway, back to you at the desk. I'm so tired right now.
You're tired.
Yeah.
And your winner, and moving on to round 2, Matthew Kearns. But
Yes.
yeah, Matt, how do you feel about your win in your first ever proper form debate?
I feel like I burst a blood vessel a couple of times. No, Jacoby, I thought The Jeopardy one, I thought he got me. Super one, like I thought he had me. It was an amazing fight. You have nothing to hang your head about. You were an amazing competitor. The reason why I had to get so passionate is because I saw from round one how passionate you were, and I had to just try to match that. So yeah, it was a great fight. I'm excited that I won, but I'm also nervous because now I have to do this all over again. But yeah, no, it was a really great match. Yeah, I'm kind of just like, I don't know what to say. I feel like there's another question that I need to be getting passionate debating about.
But yeah, in the next round, you could be facing one of two people. One is on this call right now. The other is Sandy Robinson. So you could be facing Alec or Sandy. Who do you want to face, or who do you not want?
I mean, like, it's hard to say because Alec has now judged. He's now seen me. He's seen the fight. He's like Clubber Lang at the beginning of Rocky 3, where he's been watching me and my title defenses. Sandy, on the other hand, on our show Rhyme and Reason, which you guys can find on Take 3 Productions / Rhyme and Reason, he knows a lot about me. He knows a lot of things that I love, and I don't know. Wow, I'm pushing the boulder uphill with either one of those fights. Personally, I'd love to have a little mayhem and chaos battle with my Canadian friend Sandy. Definitely.
But Jacoby, how do you feel about this match?
Oh man, I was just so tired. I'm actually really happy because now I don't have to do that again. Like that was just great. I did not expect that to be as passionate as it was, but that was a great fight, man. It was an honor to have fought you. Your arguments were just killer. Like I think I was like going into it just like I got this, maybe. Like I think my arguments are sound, and then you poked holes in all of them. So you are a great fighter, very passionate, and I really enjoyed this. And now I'm just gonna go sit in a dark room and decompress for a bit. But that was so much fun. I mean, thank you all for having me. That was awesome.
Yeah, but unfortunately, that does mean you're out of the tournament for now, but we will get you back in the main round. Is there anyone that's sort of on the roster that you would like to face?
Who can I beat? Who's anybody? Any of those people? If anybody is like Matthew, then he's gonna. I mean, like I don't want to face anybody else because I mean, like it's like, oh my god, he's so good. I guess I just want to rematch against Matthew. No, I don't. I just said that and I realized that's just going to take too much out of me. So yeah, just anybody, I guess.
Anyone who faces Jacoby, prep yourself. This man got more passionate about Ken Jennings than I think Ken Jennings' mother has ever gotten passionate about him.
I hope that's my legacy, just as the man who got passionate about Ken Jennings.
I hope that's on your tombstone, man. I hope that is just he was passionate about Ken Jennings.
I mean, we're probably going to treat this episode out to Ken Jennings, Josh McCougar, John Wesley Shipp, Mark Hamill.
Mark Hamill, James Renee. Everyone.
But
I'm tagging them all.
but anyway, for Alec, for Jacoby, for Matt, for me, for Ryan, we'll see you next time in the late night fights.